Time now for our legal team to weigh in. GMA legal analyst Dan Abrams and Nancy Grace, host of her own show on HLN. And Nancy, you've been on this trial from the start. First thing I want to know, who's going to play you in the Lifetime movie?
You know what? A lot of people have asked me about the Lifetime movie. Bottom line, I'm more concerned about what's happening in the real courtroom than what's going to be on a movie after the verdict. You know, we were all up last night till about 3 o'clock waiting to digest all of the testimony, but I'm sure that jury was wide awake just like we were.
So I can see the dryness in your voice. You don't think that last day made any difference?
Well, I think it was interesting that they tried to catch the medical examiner in a snafu in the autopsy report. The defense made a grave mistake by bringing on a shrink, a psychologist, to talk about the bullet injury to the brain, suggesting that the bullet did not go through the frontal lobe of the brain. And the significance is, if it didn't, Travis Alexander could still be chasing Jodi, Arias, even with a gunshot wound to the head. That's ridiculous. You got to have an MD, a medical examiner, for instance, to talk about that. So that was a big boo-boo in the late night hours by the defense.
So Dan, closing arguments coming up, and then they go inside the jury room. Take us inside that room. On a trial like this, do you think that at the end the jury goes with their gut on whether they like or just believe Arias, or do they actually go through the evidence?
I think sometimes people underestimate what juries do in long trials. Yes, occasionally there's an O.J. Simpson case where you have a 9-month trial and a 3 or 4 hour deliberation, but in almost every case that's not what happens. Either what you happen is, number one, the jurors go in and take an initial vote. A lot of the time you see jurors go in and they say, what do you think? That doesn't always remain the same by the time that they leave in terms of what the initial vote is. Other times they won't take a vote at the outset and they'll start piecing the evidence together. The difference in this case is it's not a whodunit. So they don't need to piece together all of these evidence to say, oh, is it? The question is, why did she do it? And I think as a result, that's a different kind of analysis that the jury's going to have to go through. And as a result, I would think that they would probably start by giving each other an indication of what they think about her guilt in terms of the crime.
And Nancy, given the point that Dan just made, if you're the
pretty good idea why, though. I got a pretty good idea why. Because after she had sex with him all day long, he told her he's going to take another woman to Cancun. Whoops! I shot him and stabbed him to death. That's what happened.
Well, Nancy, that's interesting, though. If that's the case and if that's what you believe, that kind of cuts away a little bit against premeditation, doesn't it?
Absolutely not. Because, bottom line, when she goes to see him, she crosses the desert in a fake car that she rented, the tag upside down, dyes her hair first, carries gas cans so she doesn't have to stop at a gas station and leave a trail, turns off her cell phone so she can't be triangulated, to go and change his mind about the Cancun trip. That was the marathon sex day. Well, it didn't work. Surprisingly, sex did not work to manipulate a man.
That's the most important thing in this case, as far as I'm concerned, is can the prosecutors convince this jury of the things that Nancy just laid out, in addition to the fact that a .25 caliber gun was stolen from her grandparents' home, and it was a .25 caliber bullet that killed him. Those are all the issues, I think, together that focus on premeditation. If these jurors believe that, Jodi Arias is in big trouble. If these jurors have questions, even a couple of them have questions about premeditation, that's a huge win for Jodi Arias.
And that's the point, though. Only 1 or 2 need to have questions.
Right. Well, to hang the jury, potentially. And that's why the jury deliberations in a case like this become so important, because they're not going to be fighting over who did it. They're going to be focusing on very, very minute details of what happened here.
Okay. Dan, Nancy, thanks very much.